Lord, I need to feel. I need to feel. I need to feel. All right. Good morning. Good morning. I should have got a comment. Good morning. I'll take a little picture real quick. Um, how are y'all? How y'all doing? How y'all doing? I'm about to just put this on my Instagram. Tell my close friends to join or whatever. Okay. All right, y'all. Okay, so I'm probably gonna be moving around again today because like my booty was hurting yesterday, but like I think I do like need to sit on the ground so that my back is against like the wall. Cause y'all, my back been hurting. But then last night, what I was realizing was like my pillow might be too thick. Like when it's too like big because your neck, like your back and your neck is supposed to be like, oops, it's all supposed to be on like the same accord. It's supposed to be all straight. And so my head be up because I sleep on my side. My head be up, then my back be like down because my head be up because of the pillow. So yeah. And my hair is gonna start acting a fool today. Gonna start acting a fool today because I got up and I showered and I washed my hair, so my hair is a little bit wet still. But it's okay because if it keeps acting up, I'm just gonna let it, let the scarf do its thing. Anyway, let my journal. Oh, I took it to Bible study. I'm tripping, y'all. I'm tripping. Okay, so I'm gonna tell y'all what happened last night, and then we're gonna start because anybody here yet. So anyway, so yeah, my car's in the shop, right? And so my godmom let me use her car, and then my godmom drives a Lexus, so like it takes premium gas. So I get these weekly coupons, and I'm like, my weekly coupon didn't come. I still need gas, so let me just put like $10 in there or whatever. I'm on a freeway. Now days go by, right? So I'm really tripping. I'm on a freeway and the car turned off. As I was on my way to my other Bible study, and I said, yeah, no. Mm-mm. So I want to tell you what happened to me last night. All right, we're gonna get into it. Okay, we're on day 25. Day 25 is 1 Kings 8 through 16. Day 25 is 1 Kings 8 through 16. All right. Ooh, okay, let's get it. Let's get in. I'm finna mark it off. Boom, found it. Okay. It says the ark brought to the temple. Then King Solomon summoned his presence at Jerusalem and the elders of Israel, all the heads of the tribes, and the chiefs of the Israelite families to bring up the ark of the Lord's covenant from Zion, the city of David. All the men of Israel came together to King Solomon at the time of the festival in the month of Ethanim, the 7th month. When all the elders of Israel arrived and the priests took up the ark, they brought up the ark of the Lord and and the tent of meeting, and all the sacred furnishings in it. The priests and the Levites carried them up, and King Solomon and their entire assembly of Israel that had gathered about him were before the ark, sacrificing so many sheep and cattle that they could not be recorded or counted. The priest then brought up the ark of the Lord's covenant to its place in the inner sanctuary of the temple, the most holy place, and put it beneath the wings of the cherubim. The cherubim, or the cherubim, maybe it's you, spread their wings over the place of the ark and overshadowed the ark and its carrying poles. These poles were so long that their ends could be seen from the holy place in front of the inner sanctuary, but not from the outside of the holy place, and they are still there today. There is nothing in the ark except for 2 stone tablets that Moses placed Moses placed in it at Horeb, where the Lord made the covenant with the Israelites after they came out of Egypt. When the priests withdrew from the holy place, the cloud filled the temple of the Lord, and the priests could not perform their service because of the cloud, for the glory of the Lord filled the temple. Then Solomon said, "The Lord has said that he would dwell in a dark cloud, and I have indeed built a magnificent temple for you, a place for you to dwell forever." While the whole assembly of Israel was standing there, the king turned around and blessed them. Then he said, "Praise be to the Lord, the God of Israel, who with his own hands has fulfilled what he promised with his own mouth to my father David. For he said, since the day I brought my people Israel out of Egypt, I have not chosen a city in the tribe of Israel to have a temple built for my name to be there, but I have chosen David to rule my people of Israel. My father David had in his heart to build a temple for the name of the Lord of the Lord of God of Israel. But the Lord said to my father David, because it was in your heart to build a temple for my name, you did well to have this in your heart. Nevertheless, you are not the one to build the temple, but your son, who is your own flesh and blood. He is the one who will build a temple for my name. The Lord has kept the promise that he made. I have succeeded David, my father, and now I sit on the throne of Israel, just as the Lord promised, and as I have built the temple for the name of the Lord, the God of Israel. I have provided a place there for the ark in which the covenant of the Lord he has made with our fathers when he brought them out of Egypt. Solomon's prayer of dedication. Then Solomon stood before the altar of the Lord in front of the whole assembly of Israel and spread out his hands towards the heaven and said, O Lord God of Israel, there is no God like you in heaven up or on above or on earth or below. You who keep your covenant of love with your servants and continue wholeheartedly in your way. You have kept your promise to your servant David, my father, with your mouth, and you have promised, and with your hand you have fulfilled it as it is today. Now, Lord God of Israel, keep for your servant David, my father, the promises you made to him when you said, you shall never fail to have a man sit before me on the throne of Israel, if only your sons are careful in all they do to walk before me as you have done. And now, God, O Israel, let your word that you promised your servant David, my father, come true. But will God really dwell on earth? The heavens, even the highest heavens, cannot contain you. How much less this temple I have built? Yet give attention to your servant's prayer and his plea for mercy. O Lord my God, hear the cry and the prayer that your servant is praying in your presence today. May your eyes be open towards his temple night and day, in this place where you said my name shall be there, so you will hear the prayer your servants pray towards this place. Hear the supplication of your servant and of your people Israel when they pray towards this place. Hear from heaven your dwelling place, and when you hear, forgive. When a man wrongs his neighbor and is required to take an oath, he comes and swears to the oath before the altar in this temple. Then hear from heaven and act. Judge between your servants, condemning the guilty and bringing down his own head what he has done. Declare the innocent not guilty, and so establish his innocence. When your people Israel have been defeated by an enemy because they have sinned against you, and when they turn back to you and confess your name, praying and making supplication to you in the temple, then hear from heaven and forgive the sins of your people of Israel and bring them back to the land that you gave their fathers. When the heavens are shut up and there is no rain because your people have sinned against you, and when they pray towards this place and confess your name and turn from their sin because you have afflicted them, then hear from heaven and forgive the sins of your servants, your people Israel. Teach them the right way to live and send rain on the land that you gave them for inheritance. When famine or plague comes to the land, or or blight or mildew, locusts or grasshoppers, or when an enemy besieges them in their cities, whatever disaster or disease may come, and when a prayer or plea is made by any of your people Israel, each one aware of the affliction of his own heart and spreading out his hands to the temple, then hear from heaven your dwelling place. Forgive and act. Deal with each man according to how he does to all he does, since you know his heart. For you alone know the hearts of all men, so that they will fear you all the time and they live the land that you gave their fathers. As for the foreigner who does not belong to your people, Israel, but have come from a distant land because of your name, for men will hear of your great name and your mighty hand and your outstretched arm. When he comes and prays towards the temple, then hear from heaven your dwelling place and do whatever the foreigner asks of you, so that all the people of the earth may know your name and fear you and do as your own people Israel, and may not know this house I have built that bears your name. When people go to war against their enemies, wherever you send them, and when they pray to the Lord towards the city that you have chosen and the temple I have built for your name, then hear from heaven their prayer and their plea and uphold their cause. When they sin against you, for there is no one who does not sin, and you become angry with them, give them over to their enemy who takes them captive to his own land, far away or near. And if they have a change of heart in the land where they are held captive, and repent and plead with you in the land of their conquerors, and say, we have sinned and we have done wrong, for we have acted wickedly. And if they turn back to you with all their heart and soul in the land of the enemies who took them captive and pray towards the land that you gave their fathers, towards the city you have chosen, and the temple that I have built for your name, then from heaven, your dwelling place, hear their prayer and their plea and uphold their cause. And forgive your people who have sinned against you. Forgive all of the offenses that they have committed against you, and cause their conquerors to show them mercy. For they are your people and your inheritance, whom you brought up out of Egypt, out of that iron smelting furnace. May your eyes be open to your servant's plea and to the plea of your people Israel, and may you listen to them whenever they cry out to you. For you singled them out from all nations of the world to be your own inheritance, just as you declared through your servant Moses when you, O servant Lord, brought our fathers out of Egypt. When Solomon had finished all these prayers and supplications to the Lord, he rode before the altar of the Lord where he had been kneeling with his hands spread out to the heaven. He stood and blessed the whole assembly of Israel in a loud voice, saying, praise be to the Lord who has given rest to his people Israel, just as he promised. Not one word has failed all the promises that he gave through his servant Moses. May the Lord our God be with us as he was with our fathers. May he never leave or forsake us. May he turn our hearts to him to walk in all his ways and keep the commands, decrees, regulations he gave to our fathers. And may these words of mine, which I have prayed before the Lord, be near the Lord our God day and night, that he may uphold the cause his servant and cause his people Israel according to each day's need, so that all the people of the earth may know that the Lord is God and that there is no other. But your heart must be fully committed to the Lord our God, to live by his decrees and obey his commands at this time. The dedication of the temple. Then the king and all Israel with him offered sacrifices before the Lord. Solomon offered a sacrifice of fellowship offering to the Lord, 22,000 cattle and 120,000 sheep and goats. So the king and all of the Israelites dedicated the temple of the Lord. On that same day, the king consecrated the middle part of the courtyard in front of the temple of the Lord, and there he offered burnt offerings and grain offerings and the fat of the fellowship offerings, because the bronze altar before the Lord was too small to hold the burnt offerings, the grain offerings, and the fat of the fellowship offerings. So Solomon observed this festival at at the time, and all Israel was with him, a vast assembly, people from Lebo Hamath to the Wadi of Egypt. And they celebrated it before the Lord our God for 7 days and 7 more, 14 days in all. On the following day he sent people away. They blessed the king, and they went home joyful and glad in heart for all the good things the Lord has done for his servant David and his people of Israel. I'm gonna put, man, that was a lot, but I'm just gonna put When the Lord says something, it's going to happen. Mind you, that's simple. But David is the one who wanted to build the place for the Lord, right? And he was like, well, I appreciate you for wanting that, but your son's going to do it. So it's still going to happen through you. It's still going to happen through you. It might not happen because you did it, but it's going to happen through you and through your lineage. So it's important to understand that sometimes the blessing's not always going to come like directly from us, but we'll have some influence on it because God said it. Yeah. Even Solomon was able to say, you know what, God, you said this to my father, and it was able to come to pass. Number 9, when Solomon had finished building the temple of the Lord and the royal palace and achieved all the things he desired to do, the Lord appeared to him a second time as he appeared to him in Gibeon. The Lord said to him, I have heard the prayer and plea that you made before me, and I have consecrated this temple which you have built by putting my name there forever. My eyes and my heart will always be there. As for you, if you walk before me in the integrity of heart and uprightness, as David your father did, and I command and observe my decrees and laws, I'll establish your royal throne over Israel forever. And as I promised David your father when I said, you shall never fail to have a man on the throne of Israel. But if you or your sons turn away from me and do not observe the commands and decrees that I have given you, and go off to serve other gods and worship them, then I will cut off Israel from the land, and I will give them and reject the temple that I have consecrated for my name. Israel will then become a byword and the objects of ridicule among people. And though this temple is now imposing, all who pass by it will be appalled and will scoff and say, why has the Lord done such a thing to this place and this temple? People will answer, because they have forsaken the Lord their God, who brought their fathers out of Egypt, and have embraced other gods, worshiping them and serving them. This is why the Lord has brought disaster to them. Solomon's other activities. At the end of 20 years during which Solomon built these two buildings, the temple of the Lord and the royal palace, the king Solomon gave 20 towns in Galilee to Hiram, king of Tyre, because Hiram had supplied him with the cedar, pine, and gold. All the cedar, pine, and gold that he wanted. But when Hiram went from Tyre to go see the towns that Solomon had given him, he was not pleased with them. He said, what kind of towns are these that you've given me, my brother? Yes, he called them the land of Kabul, the name that they have to this day. Now Hiram had sent to the king 120 talents of gold. Here is the account of the forced labor King Solomon conscripted to build the Lord's temple, his own palace, the supporting terraces, the wall of Jerusalem, and Hazor, Megiddo, and Jezer. He built Lower Beth Horon, Belath, and Tadmor in the desert within his land, as well as his store cities and the towns for his chariots and for his horses, whatever he desired to build in Jerusalem, in Lebanon, and throughout the territory that he ruled. All the people left from the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. Those people were not Israelites, by the way. That is their descendants remaining in the land, who the Israelites could not exterminate. These Solomon's conscripted for a slave force as to this day. But Solomon did not make slaves of any of the Israelites. They were his fighting men, his government officials, his officers, his captains, and the commanders of his chariots and charioteers. They were the chief officials in charge of Solomon's projects, 550 officials supervising the men who did the work. After Pharaoh's daughter had come up from the city of David to the palace Solomon had built for her, he constructed the supporting terraces. 3 times a year, Solomon sacrificed burnt offerings and fellowship offerings on the altar that he built for the Lord, burning incense before the Lord among them, and so fulfilled the temple's obligation. King Solomon also built ships at Ezion Gibber, which is near Helath in Edom, on the shore of the Red Sea. And Hiram sent his men, sailors who knew the sea, to serve in the fleet with Solomon's men. They sailed to Ophir and brought back 420 talents of gold, which they delivered to King Solomon. Okay. Number 10. It says the Queen of Sheba, visits Solomon. When the Queen of Sheba heard about the fame that Solomon and his relations to the to the name of the Lord. She came to test him with hard questions. Arriving at Jerusalem with a very great caravan with camels carrying spices, large quantities of gold, and precious stone, she came to Solomon to talk with him about all she had on her mind. Solomon answered all of her questions. None was too hard for the king to explain to her. When the queen of Sheba saw the wisdom of Solomon, and the palace that he built, the food on his table, and the seating of his officials, the attending servants in their robes, his cupbearers, and the burnt offerings that he made at the temple of the Lord, she was overwhelmed. She said to the king, "The report that I have heard in my own country about your achievements and your wisdom is true. But I did not believe these things until I came here and saw with my own eyes. Indeed, not even half what was told to me in the wisdom and wealth that you have far exceeded the report." So not even half of it is true because he exceeded it. Um, I heard the report I heard, how happy your men must be, how happy your officials who continue to stand before you and hear your wisdom. Praise be to the Lord your God who has delighted in the place in you and placed you on the throne of Israel. Because of the Lord's eternal love for Israel, he has made you king and to maintain justice and righteousness. And she gave the king 120 talents of gold, large quantity of spices, and precious stones. Never again were so many spices brought in as those the queen of Sheba gave to King Solomon. King Solomon gave the queen of Sheba all that she desired and desired, all she desired, besides what he had given her out of his royal bounty. Then she left and returned with her retinue to her own country. So it says Solomon's splendor. The weight of the gold that Solomon received yearly was 666 talents, not including the revenues from the merchants, the traders, and all of the Arabian kings and the governors of the land. King Solomon made 200 large shields of hammered gold, 200 bekas of gold with into each shield, and he made 300 small shields of hammered gold with 3 minas of gold in each shield. The king put them in the palace of the forest of Lebanon. Then the king made a great throne inlaid of ivory and overlaid with fine gold. The throne had 6 steps, and its back had a rounded top. On both sides of the seats were armrests with the lions sitting beside each of them. 12 lions stood on the 6 steps, one at either end of the step. Nothing like it has ever been made in any other kingdom. All King Solomon's goblets were gold, and all the household articles in the palace of the forest of Lebanon were pure gold. Nothing was made of silver because silver was considered little value in Solomon's days. The king had a fleet of trading ships at the sea along with the ships of Hiram. Once every 3 years it returned carrying gold, silver, and ivory, and apes and baboons. King Solomon was greater in riches and wisdom than all the kings of the earth. The whole world sought audience with Solomon to hear wisdom God has put in his ears. Year after year, everyone who came brought a gift, articles of silver and gold, robes, weapons, and spices, and horses and mules. Solomon accumulated chariots and horses and had 1,400 chariots and 12,000 horses, which he kept in the chariot cities and also with him in Jerusalem. The king made silver as common as Jerusalem as stones and cedar in the plentiful uh, sycamore fig trees in the foothills. Solomon's horses were imported from Egypt and from Kew. The royal merchants purchased them from Kew. They imported a chariot from Egypt for 600 shekels of silver and a horse for 150. They also exported them all the kings of the Hittites and of the Arameans. Oh, okay. Okay. So the woman coming, so the queen of Sheba. Okay. So the Queen of Sheba, I think that the fact that she came because she was like, I heard that you were this and that, right? So I want to come ask you some questions. So she asked some questions, and so I was just thinking like sometimes we get so defensive when it comes to like things that we really care about, and I don't know how others would respond in today's world. Like when people get mad, when people not want to respond to her questions, but when people ask you questions about God, or when even when they're being rude, whatever the case is, like we are meant to serve and to bring people to God. And I think that we do that by, showing love and like answering questions. So we got to know our word. We can't be out here trying to like bring people on and not know or talk about or like brag about God, which is good, but not know what he does and what he says and the things that he's done in the past. So that's what I wrote down. Okay, I'm gonna like switch my. Oh, y'all heard that? Trying to let y'all know I don't be tripping, y'all. I don't be tripping. Ooh. Oh, I know you heard that. Ooh. That one was crucial. Okay, number 11 says Solomon's wives. King Solomon, however, loved many foreign women besides Pharaoh's daughter, the Moabites, the Ammonites, the Edomites, the Sidonians, and the Hittites. Hold on. Oh, okay. Let's just do it like this so that I don't have the ball like touching the back of my neck, making it hurt. Okay. So he had many wives. I don't think that's a good thing. He had many wives. He loved many foreign women. So they were from the nations of which the Lord had told the Israelites, you must not intermarry with them because it will surely turn your hearts after their gods. Nevertheless, Solomon held fast to them in love, sorry. He had 700 wives of royal birth and 300 concubines, and his wives led him astray. As soon as Solomon grew old, his wives turned his heart after other gods, and his heart was not fully devoted to the Lord his God, as the heart of David his father had been. He followed Ashereth, the goddess of the Sidonians, and Molech, the detestable god of the Ammonites. So Solomon did evil in the eyes of the Lord, and he did not follow the Lord completely as David his father had done. On a hill east of Jerusalem, Solomon built a high place for Chomish, the detestable god of Moab, and Molech, and the detestable god of the Ammonites. He did the same for all his foreign wives who burned incense and offered sacrifices to their gods. The Lord became angry with Solomon because his heart turned away from the Lord, the God of Israel, who had appeared to him twice. Although he had forbidden Solomon to follow other gods, Solomon did not keep the Lord's command. So the Lord said to Solomon, since this is your attitude and you have not kept my covenant and my decrees which I commanded you, I will certainly tear the kingdom away from you and give it to one of your subordinates. Nevertheless, for the sake of David your father, I will not do it during your lifetime. I will tear it out of the hand of your son. Yet I will not tear the whole kingdom down from him, but I will give him one tribe for the sake of David my servant, and for the sake of Jerusalem, which I have chosen. Solomon's adversaries. Then the Lord raised up against Solomon an adversary, Hadad the Edomite, from the royal line of Edom. Earlier, when David was fighting with Edom, Joab, the commander of the army who had gone up to bury the dead, had struck down all the men of Edom. Joab and all the Israelites stayed there for 6 months until they destroyed all the men of Edom. But Hadad was still only a boy and fled to Egypt with some Edomite officials who served his father. They set out from Midian and went to Paran. Then, taking men from Paran with them, they went to Egypt to Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, who gave Hadad a house and land and brought him with food. Pharaoh was so pleased with Hadad that he gave him a sister of his own wife, Queen Taphanes, in marriage. The sister of Taphanes bore him a son named Genubeth, whom Taphanes brought in the royal palace where Genubeth lived with Pharaoh's own children. While he was with Egypt, Hadad heard David rested with his fathers and that Joab, the commander of the army, was also dead. Then he said to Pharaoh, let me go that I may return to my own country. He said, what have you lacked here that you want to go back to your own country? Pharaoh asked. He said, nothing, but let me go. And God raised up against Solomon and another adversary, Rezon, son of Eliada, who had fled from his master, Hadadezer, king of Zobah. Zobah. He gathered men around him and became the leader of the band of rebels when David destroyed the forces of Zobah. The rebels went to Damascus, where they settled and took control. Rezin was Israel's adversary as long as Solomon lived, adding to the trouble caused by Hadad. So Rezin ruled in Aram and was hostile towards Israel. Jeroboam rebels against Solomon. Also, Jeroboam, so he's just, the Lord's just really just letting all these adversaries come. I'm like, okay, you wanna worship other gods? Now I'm gonna raise people up against you. Okay, so it says also Jeroboam, I'm gonna say Jeroboam, son of Nebat, rebelled against the king. He was one of Solomon's officials, an Ephraimite of Zereda, and his mother was a widow named Zeruiah. Here's the account of how he rebelled against the king. Solomon had built up supporting terraces and had filled in the gaps of the walls of the city of David his father. Now Jeroboam was a man standing, and when Solomon saw how well the young man did with work, he put him in charge of the whole labor force of the house of Joseph. About that time, Jeroboam was going out of Israel to Ahijah, the prophet of Shiloh, met him on the way wearing a new cloak. The two of them were alone out in the country, and Ahijah took hold of the new cloak that he was wearing and tore it into 12 pieces. Then he said to Jeroboam, "Take 10 of yours for yourself to see what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. See, I am going to tear the kingdom out of Solomon's hand and give you 10 tribes, but for the sake of my servant David and the city of Jerusalem, which I have chosen, and all the tribes of Israel, he will have one tribe. And I will do this because they have forsaken me and worshipped other Ashereths, Ashereth, the god of the Sidonians, Shamash, the god of the Moabites, and Molech, the god of the Ammonites, and have not walked in my ways, nor done what is right in my eyes, nor kept my statutes in the laws as David, Solomon's father, did. But I will not take the whole kingdom out of Solomon's hand. I have made him ruler all the days of his life for the sake of David, my servant, who I chose and who observe my commands and statutes. I will take the kingdom from his son's hands and give you 10 tribes, and I will give only one tribe to his son, so that David, my servant, may always have a lamp before me in Jerusalem, the city where I chose to put my name. However, as for you, I will take you, and you will rule over all that your heart desires. You will become king over Israel, and you will do whatever I command you, and walk in the ways and do what is right in my eyes, by keeping my statutes and my commands, as David my servant did, and I will be with you. I will build you a dynasty enduring as the one I built for David, and give Israel to you, and I will humble David's descendants because of this, but not forever. Solomon tried to kill Jeroboam, but Jeroboam fled to Egypt, to Shishak the king, and stayed there until Solomon's death. Solomon's death. As for the events of Solomon's reign, all he did, and the wisdom that he displayed, are they not written in the book of the Annals as Solomon? Solomon reigned in Jerusalem over all Israel for 40 years, and he rested with his fathers and was buried in the city of David his father. And Rehoboam his son succeeded him as king. Ooh, child. I'm going through it. Scarf is acting up. Back it. It's like, ooh. All right. So anyway, I'm just trying to figure this out, like, which is crazy because this is literally how we be acting. So I keep it like this. I gotta move over some more. Yeah, cool. I think that works out better. Okay, anyway. It's crazy because we feel so much judgment towards him, but like this is the same thing that we do. But I will say that it really starts like sexual immorality is serious. Sexual immorality is serious because you're sharing your body, your time, you're sharing so much with people until your partner needs to be somebody who like loves God and can help you stay on track with like your spiritual journey or get you off the wrong track. I'm just gonna let this do its own thing. So it started with sexual immorality to me because he had all them wives. Let's say I said sexual immorality is serious. I'm not gonna go into detail on these notes. Solomon messed up by loving women who God said not to intermarry. So it said Israel rebels against Rehoboam. Rehoboam went to Shechem, for all the Israelites had gone there to make him a king. When Jeroboam, son of Nebat, heard of this, he returned from Egypt. So they sent for Jeroboam, and he and his whole assembly went to Rehoboam and said to him, "Your father put a heavy yoke on us, but now lighten the harsh labor and the heavy yoke that he put on us, and we will serve you." Rehoboam answered, "Go away for 3 days and then come back to me." So the people went away. Then King Rehoboam consulted the elders who had served his father Solomon during his lifetime. He said, "How would you advise me to take these people?" They replied, If today you will be a servant to these people and serve them and give them a favorable answer, they will always be your servants." But Rehoboam rejected the advice of the elders and they gave him and consulted with young men who he had grown up with and were serving him. He said, "What's your advice? How should we answer these people who say to me, 'Lighten their yoke your father put on us'?" The young men who had grown up with him said, "Tell these people who have said, 'Your father put a heavy yoke on us, but make our yoke lighter.' Tell them, 'My little finger is thicker than my father's waist. My father laid on you a heavy yoke, and I will make it even heavier. My father scourged you with whips, and I will scourge you with scorpions." 3 days later, Jeroboam and all the people returned to Rehoboam as the king had said, "Come back to me in 3 days." The king answered the people harshly, rejecting the advice given to him by the elders. He followed the advice of the young men and said, "My father made your yoke heavy, but I will make it even heavier. He scourged you with whips, and I will scourge you with scorpions." So the king did not listen to the people, for this was the events from the Lord to fulfill the word of the Lord that spoke to Jeroboam, son of Nebat, through Ahijah the Shilonite. When all of Israel saw the king refuse to listen to him, they answered the king, "What share do we have in David? What part in Jesse's son? To your tents, O Israel, look after your own house, O David." So the Israelites went home, but as for the Israelites who were living in the towns of Judah, and Rehoboam still ruled over them, King Rehoboam sent out Adoniram, who was in charge of the forced labor, but all of Israel stoned him to death. King Rehoboam and King Rehoboam, however, managed to get into his chariot and escape to Jerusalem. So Israel had been in rebellion against the house of David to this day. When all the Israelites heard that Jeroboam had returned, they sent and called him to assembly to make him king over Israel. Only the tribe of Judah remained loyal in the house of David. When Rehoboam arrived in Jerusalem, he mustered the whole house of Judah and the tribe of Benjamin, and 180,000 fighting men to make war against the house of Israel, and to regain the kingdom of Rehoboam, son of Solomon. But this word of God came to Shimei, the man of God: "Say to Rehoboam, son of Solomon, king of Judah, to the whole house of Judah and Benjamin, and to the rest of the people, this is what the Lord says: Do not go up and fight against your brothers, the Israelites. Go home, every one of you, for this is my doing." So they obeyed the Lord. They obeyed the Lord and went home again as the Lord had ordered. Golden calves at Bethel and Dan. Then Jeroboam fortified Shechem in the hill country of Ephraim and lived there. From there he went out and built up Peniel. Jeroboam thought to himself, "The kingdom will now likely revert to the house of David. If these people go up to offer sacrifices at the temple of the Lord of Jerusalem, they will again give their allegiance to their Lord, Rehoboam, the king of Judah, and they will kill me and return to the king of Rehoboam." After seeking advice, the king made 2 golden calves, and he said to the people, "It is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Here are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt." He set up in Bethel and the other in Dan, and the thing became a sin. The people went as even far as Dan to worship the one there. Jeroboam built shrines on high places and appointed priests from all sorts of people, even though they were not Levites. He cons- he instituted a festival on the 15th day of the 8th month, like the festival held in Judah, and freed and offered sacrifices on the altar. He did this in Bethel, sacrificing the calves that he made, and all and at Bethel he installed priests at the high places that he made. On the 15th day of the 8th month, a month of his own choosing, he offered sacrifices on the altar that he built at Bethel. So he instituted a festival for the Israelites and went up to the altar to make offerings. When we are jealous or when we fear something, that's when we start doing stupid stuff. Because basically, Jeroboam has all of Israel, like all the Israelites are following him. They're supposed to be going to Jerusalem to make offerings. He's like, if they go to Jerusalem, they're not going to follow me anymore because they're offering to the same God that Rehoboam had. And so they're saying like, he's saying, okay, well, instead of them going to Jerusalem and maybe following Rehoboam again, I'm just going to build these golden calves, and they're just going to stay here and offer their offerings here on this altar that I built. He chose his own month for a festival. So he's really just doing his own thing because he doesn't want them to follow God and to go back to following Rehoboam. So it says the man of God from Judah. By the word of the Lord, a man of God came from Judah to Bethel as Jeroboam was standing by an altar to make offering. He cried out against the altar by the word of the Lord. O altar, altar, this is what the Lord says. A man named Josiah will be born in the house of David. On you he sacrificed the priests of the high places who now make offerings here, and human bones will be burned on you. That same day the man of God gave a sign. This is a sign that the Lord has declared. The altar will be split apart, and the ashes on it will be poured out. When the king Jeroboam heard what the man of God cried out against the altar at Bethel, he stretched out his hand from the altar and said, "Seize him." But the hand he stretched out towards the man shriveled up, so he could not pull it back. Also, the altar was split apart, and its ashes poured out according to the sign given by the man of God by the word of the Lord. Then the king said to the man of God, "Intercede with the Lord your God and pray for me that my hand may be restored." So the man of God interceded with the Lord, and the king's hand was restored, and it became as it was before. The king said to the man of God, "Come home with me and have something to eat, and I will give you a gift." But the man of God answered the king, "Even if you were to give me half of your possessions, I would not go with you, nor would I eat bread or drink water here. For I have been commanded by the word of the Lord, you must not eat bread or drink water or return by the way you came." So he took another road and did not return the way that he come to Bethel. Now there was an old prophet living in Bethel whose son came and told him all that the man of God had done there that day. They also told their father what he said to the king. Their father asked him, "Which way did he go?" And his son showed him which road the man of God from Judah had taken. So he said to his son, "Saddle the donkey for me." And when they saddled the donkey for him, he mounted and rode after the man of God. He found him sitting under an oak tree and asked, "Are you the man of God who came from Judah?" He said, "I am." So the prophet said to him, "Come home with me and eat." The man of God said, "I cannot turn back and go with you, nor can I eat bread or drink water with you in this place. I have been told by the word of the Lord, you must not eat bread or drink water or return by the way you came." The old prophet answered, "I am too a prophet as you are." And an angel said to me, "By the word of the Lord, bring him back with you to your house, we may eat bread and drink water." But he was lying. So the man of God returned with him and ate and drank in his house. While they were sitting at the table, the word of the Lord came to the old prophet who brought him back. He cried out to the man of God who came from Judah, "This is what the Lord says. You have defied the word of the Lord and not kept the command of the Lord your God gave you. You came back and ate bread and drank water in this place where he told you not to eat or drink. Therefore your body will not be buried in the tomb of your fathers." When the man of God finished eating and drinking, the prophet who had brought him back saddled his donkey for him. And as he went on his way, a lion met him on the road and killed him, and his body was thrown down on the road with both the donkey and the lion standing beside it. Some people who passed by saw the body thrown down there with the lion standing beside the body, and they went and reported it to the city where the old prophet lived. When the prophet heard who had brought him back from the journey and heard of it, he said, "It is the man of God who defied the word of the Lord. The Lord has given him over to the lion, which mauled him and killed him, as the word of the Lord warned him." The prophet said to his son, "Saddle the donkey for me." Then he went out and found the dead body thrown down the road with the donkey and the lion standing beside it. The lion had neither eaten the body nor mauled the donkey. So the prophet picked up the body of the man of God and laid it on the donkey and brought it back to his city to mourn for him and bury him. That's so backwards. Then he laid the body in his own tomb, and they mourned over him and said, "Oh, my brother." After burying him, he said to his sons, "When I die, bury me in the grave where the man of God is buried. Lay my bones beside his bones, for the message he declared by the word of the Lord against the altar in Bethel and against the shrines on the high places and the towns of Samaria will certainly come true." Even after this, Jeroboam did not change his evil ways, but once more appointed priests for high places of all sorts of people. Anyone who wanted to become a priest, he consecrated for the high places. This was the sin of the house of Jeroboam that led it down to its downfall and to its destruction from the face of the earth. So, when you get a word from God, do it. We see that. But this is so backwards to me because the prophet lied to him to get him to come back, and then he wants to be buried with him and then mourn after him. Stop lying. That reminds me of the same people who were saying to kill Jesus, and then when Jesus was dead, they wanted to be sad. Crazy. Anyway, 14. At the time, Abijah, son of Jeroboam, became ill, and Jeroboam said to his wife, "Go disguise yourself so you won't be recognized as the wife of Jeroboam. Then go to Shiloh. Ahijah was a prophet there, and the one who told me I would be king over his people. Take 10 loaves of bread with you and some cakes and a jar of honey, and go to him. He will tell you what will happen to the boy." So Jeroboam's wife did what he said and went to Ahijah in the house of Shiloh. Now Ahijah could not see; his sight was gone because of his age, but the Lord had told Ahijah, "Jeroboam's wife is going to come and ask you about her son, for he is ill, and you are to give her such and such answer. And when she arrives, she will pretend to be someone else." So when Ahijah heard the sound of her footsteps at the door, he said, "Come in, wife of Jeroboam. Why this pretense? I have been sent to you with bad news. Go tell Jeroboam that this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. I raised you up from amongst the people and made you a leader over my people Israel. I tore the kingdom away from the house of David and gave it to you, but you have not been like my servant David, who kept my commands and followed me with all of his heart, doing only what was right in my eyes. You have done more evil than all those who lived before you. You have made for yourself other gods, idols made out of metal, and you have provoked me to anger and thrust me behind your back. Because of this, I'm going to bring disaster to the house of Jeroboam. I will cut off every Jeroboam, every male in Israel, slave or free. I will burn up the house of Jeroboam as one burns dung until it's gone. Dogs will eat those belonging in Jeroboam who die in the city, and the birds of the air will feed on those who die in the country. The Lord has spoken. Excuse me. As for you, go back home. When you set foot in your city, the boy will die. All Israel will mourn for him and bury him. He is the one belonging to Jeroboam who will be buried because he is the one in the house of Jeroboam in whom the Lord, the God of Israel, has found anything good. The Lord will raise up for himself a king over Israel who will cut off the family of Jeroboam. This is the day. What? Yes, even now. The Lord will strike Israel so that it will be like a reed swaying in the water. He will uproot Israel from the good land that he gave their forefathers and scatter them beyond the river because they provoked the Lord by making Asherah poles. And he will give Israel up because of the sins Jeroboam has committed and has caused Israel to commit. Then Jeroboam's wife got up and left and went to Tirzah. As soon as she stepped over the threshold of the house, the boy died. They buried him, and all of Israel mourned for him, as the Lord had said through his servant of the prophet Ahijah. The other events of Jeroboam's reign, his wars, now he ruled, and are written in the book of the annals, the kings of Israel. He reigned for 22 years and rested with his fathers, and Nadab his son succeeded him as king. Rehoboam, king of Judah. Rehoboam, son of Solomon, was king in Judah. He was 41 years old when he became king, and he reigned 17 years in Jerusalem. The city of the Lord chosen. The city of the Lord had chosen out. Wait. all the tribes of Israel, which was put in his name. His mother's name was Naamah, and she was an Ammonite. Judah did evil in the eyes of the Lord by the sins they committed. They stirred up the jealous anger and more of their fathers had done. They had also set up for themselves high places, sacred stones, and asherah poles on every hill and under every spreading tree. There were even male shrine prostitutes in the land. The people engaged in all detestable practices of the nations the Lord had driven out before the Israelites. In the 5th year of King Rehoboam, Shishak, the king of Egypt, attacked Jerusalem. He carried off treasures of the temple of the Lord and the treasures of the royal palace. He took everything, including all gold shields Solomon had made. Okay. So King Rehoboam made bronze shields to replace them, assigned these to the commanders of the guard on duty at the entrance of the royal palace. Whenever the king went to the Lord's temple, the guards bore the shields, and afterwards they returned them to the guard room. As for the other events of Rehoboam's reign and all that he did, they were not written in the book of the annals at the king of Judah. There were continual warfare between Rehoboam and Jeroboam, and Rehoboam rested with his fathers and was buried with them at the city of David. His mother's name was Naamah, she was an Ammonite, and Abijah, his son, succeeded him as king. Abijah, the king of Judah. In the 18th year of reign, Jeroboam, son of Nebat, Abijah, became king of Judah. So this is this is the son of Jeroboam, who is the bad person. Okay. No, sorry, I'm on 15. So I'm start over. In the 18th year of reign of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, Abijah came to be king of Judah, and he reigned in Jerusalem 3 years. His mother's name was Maacah, the daughter of Abishalom. He committed all the sins his father did before him, and his heart was not fully devoted to the Lord his God, as the heart of David, his forefather, had been. Nevertheless, for David's sake, the Lord his God gave him a lamp in Jerusalem by raising up a son to succeed him in making Jerusalem strong. For David had done what was right in the eyes of the Lord and had not failed to keep any of the Lord's commands all the days of his life, except for in the case of Uriah the Hittite. There was a war between Rehoboam and Jeroboam throughout Abijah's lifetime, as the other events of Abijah's reign, and all that he did was not written in the book of the annals at the king of Judah. There was war between Abijah and Jeroboam, and Abijah rested with his fathers and was buried in the city of David, and Asa his son succeeded him as king. Okay, y'all were almost there. Asa, the king of Judah. In the 20th year of Jeroboam, king of Israel, Asa became the king of Judah, and he reigned in Jerusalem for 41 years. His grandmother's name was Maacah, the son of Abishalom. Asa did what was right in the eyes of the Lord. Okay, period, as David had done. Good. He expelled the male shrine prostitutes from the land and got rid of the idols his fathers had made. So this. Okay. He even deposed his grandmother Maacah for her position as queen mother because she made a repulsive Asherah pole. Asa cut down the pole and burned it in the Kidron Valley. Although he did not remove the high places, Asa's heart was fully committed to the Lord all his life. He brought into the temple of the Lord silver and gold and the articles that his father had dedicated. There was a war between Asa and Baasha, the king of Israel, throughout their reigns. Baasha, the king of Israel, went against Judah and fortified Ramah to prevent anyone from leaving or entering the territory of Asa, king of Judah. Asa took all the silver and gold that was left in the treasuries of the Lord's temple and in his own palace. He entrusted it into officials and sent them to Ben-Hadad, son of Tibrimon, the son of Hezion, and the king of Aram, who was ruling in Damascus. Let there be a treaty between me and you, he said, as there has been a treaty between my father and your father. See that I am sending you gifts of silver and gold. Now break your treaty with Baasha, the king of Israel, so he will withdraw from you. Ben-Hadad agreed with the king Asa and sent the commanders of his forces against the town of Israel. He conquered Hijon, Dan, Abel, Beth, Maacah, and Kinnereth, all the additions to Naphtali. When Baasha heard this, he stopped building Ramah and withdrew to Tirzah. Then King Asa issued an order to all Judah, no one was exempt, and they carried away from Ramah the stones and timber that Baasha was using there. With them, King Asa built up Jebah and Benjamin, and also Mizpah. As for the other events of Asa's reign and his achievements, all he did and his cities built, are they not written in the book of the annals in the king of Judah? In his old age, however, his feet became deceased, and Asa rested with his fathers and was buried with them in the cities of his father David. And Jehoshaphat, his son, succeeded him as king. Okay, period, Asa. Because everybody right now is tripping. So, period, actually following the Lord. Says Nadab, king of Israel. Nadab, son of Jeroboam, came to the king of Israel in the second year of Asa, king of Judah, and reigned over Israel for 2 years. He did evil in the eyes of the Lord, walking in the ways of his father and in his sin, which he caused Israel to commit. Baasha, son of Ahijah, of the house of Issachar, plotted against him, and he struck him down at Gibbethon, a Philistine town, while Nadab and Israel were besieging it. Baasha killed Nadab in the 3rd year of Asa, king of Judah, and succeeded him as king. Okay, I have to go back sometime because I'm reading. I'm like, what? So Nadab is the son of Jeroboam, of course. He did evil in the eyes of the Lord, walking the ways his father sin was walking there. Okay, Baasha was the son of Ahijah in the house of Issachar, plotted against him, and he struck him down. Okay, he killed Nadab in the 3rd year of Asa, king of Judah, succeeded him as king. Okay, as soon as he began to reign, he killed Jeroboam's whole family. He did not leave Jeroboam anyone that breathed, but destroyed them all according to the word that the Lord given through his servant Ahijah the Shilonite because of his sins. We remember reading that. Oh my God. We remember reading that. Okay. So it says, because the sins Jeroboam had committed had caused Israel to commit the sins, it provoked the Lord, the God of Israel, to anger. As for the other cities of Nadab's reign and all that he did are not written in the book of the annals of the annals of the kings of Israel. There was a war between Asa and Baasha, the king of Israel, throughout their reigns. So Jeroboam, whole family gone. Whole family is gone because that's why you got to be careful by saying you want to be a leader. And when you are a leader, you have to lead correctly, because when you lead people astray, God sees it and he's going to get you together. You got to be careful. We are not supposed to lead people astray. Last chapter, it says, in the 3rd year of Asa, king of Judah, Baasha, son of Ahijah, became king of all Israel in Tirzah, and he reigned 24 years. He did evil in the eyes of the Lord, walking in the ways of Jeroboam and in his sin, which he had caused Israel to commit. Then the word of the Lord came to Jehu, the son of Hanani, against Baasha. I lifted you from dust and made you leader of my people Israel, but you walked in the ways of Jeroboam and caused my people Israel to sin and provoke me to anger by their sins. So I'm about to consume Baasha and his house, and I will make your house like those of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat. Dogs will eat those belonging to Baasha who die in the city, and the birds of the air will feed those who die in the country. As for the other events of Baasha's reign, what he did and his achievements, are they not written in the book of the annals of the king of Israel? I'm about to Google why it keeps saying that. Baasha rested with his fathers and was buried in Tirzah, and Elah, his son, succeeding him as king. Moreover, the word of the Lord came through the prophet of Jehu, the son of Hanani, to Baasha and his house, because of all the evil that he done in the eyes of the Lord, provoking him to anger by the things that he did, becoming like the house of Jeroboam, and also because he destroyed it. Elah, king of Israel. In the 26th year of Asa, king of Judah, Elah, son of Baasha, became the king of Israel, and he reigned in Tirzah for 2 years. Zimri, one of his officials who had commanded half of his chariots, plotted against him. Elah was in Tirzah at the time, getting drunk in the home of Arza, the man in charge of the palace at Tirzah. Zimri came in and struck him down and killed him in the 27th year of Asa, the king of Judah, and then they succeeded him as king. As soon as he began to reign, he was seated on the throne. He killed off Baasha's whole family. He did not spare a single man, rather relative or friend. So Zimri destroyed the whole family of Baasha in accordance to the word of the Lord spoken against Baasha through the prophet of Jehu. Because of all his sins, Baasha his son Elah had caused Israel to commit. So that provoked the Lord, the God of Israel, anger by their worthless idols. As for the other events of Elah's reign and all he did, are they not written in the book of the annals at the kings of Israel? Zimri, king of Israel, in the 27th year of Asa, king of Judah, Zimri reigned in Tirzah 7 days. The army was encamped near Gibbethon, a Philistine town. When the Israelites camped and heard that Zimri had plotted against the king and murdered him, they proclaimed Omri, the commander of the army, king over Israel that very day in the camp. Then Omri and all the Israelites with him withdrew from Gibbethon and laid siege to Tira. When Zimri saw that the city was taken, he went to Citadel, the royal palace, to set the palace on fire around him, so he died because of the sins that he committed, doing evil in the eyes of the Lord and walking in the ways of Jeroboam, and in the sin that he committed and caused Israel to commit. As for the other events of Zimri's reign and the rebellion he carried out, are they not written in the book of the Annals? I keep saying Annals. Annals at the kings of Israel. Omri, king of Israel. Then people of Israel were split into two factions. Half supported Tibni, son of Jenath, for the king, and the other supported Omri. But Omri's followers proved stronger than those of Tibni, son of Jeneth. So Tibni died, and Omri became king. In the 31st year of Asa, king of Judah, Omri became king of Israel, and he reigned 12 years, 6 of them in Tirzah. He brought the hill of Samaria from Shemer for 2 talents of silver, and built a city on the hill, calling it Samaria, after Shemer, the name of the former owner of the hill. But Omri did evil in the eyes of the Lord and sinned more than all those before him. He walked in all the ways of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, in his sin, which caused Israel to commit. So that provoked the Lord of the God of Israel to anger by their worthless idols. As for the other events of Omri's reign and what he did and the things that he achieved, are they not written in the book of the Annals at the kings of Israel? Omri rested with his fathers and was brought in Samaria, and Ahab his son succeeded him as king. Ahab becomes king of Israel. In the 38th year of Asa, king of Judah, Ahab, son of Omri, became king of Israel, and he reigned in Samaria over Israel 22 years. Ahab, son of Omri, did more evil in the eyes of the Lord, more than any of the others before him. He not only considered it trivial to commit sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, but he also married Jezebel, daughter of Ithbal, king of the Sidonians, and began to serve Baal and rebel and worship him. He set up an altar for Baal or Baal and the temple of Baal, and he built in Samaria. Also made an Asherah pole and did more to provoke the Lord, the God of Israel, to anger than all the kings of Israel before him. In Ahab's time, Hiel of Bethel rebuilt Jericho, and he laid its foundation at the cost of his firstborn son Abiram, and he set up its gates at the cost of his youngest son Segub, in accordance with the word of the Lord spoken by Joshua son of Nun. So this whole thing is crazy. So I get what's going on. I get it. This is what's going on. Y'all remember when the people asked for the king? So remember when the people wanted a king so they could be like everyone else. Not only did they get the king, but not only did they get a king, but they got many kings. Why? Why did they have so many kings? Because we are of sinful nature, and that's the whole premise behind this, and the reason why God didn't even want them to want a king is because he wanted them to desire him. They should have desired God to the point where they don't even want a king. Or feel that they need one. Why? Because God's the only king that they need, and that was the whole purpose. That was the whole reason why he was even mad when they asked for him, because they were asking one because they wanted to be like other people. But now, not only did God give them one king, He gave them multiple kings, and He gave them multiple kings because every time nobody could fulfill the steps of David, but even David was sinful, and so I think it's a prime example of like we gotta be careful what we ask for, and that we just need to follow God. And it's good to have mentors. It's good to follow your pastor. It's good to like be led, but you got to be careful of where you're being led to because the people committed sins because of their leader. And so if you are following somebody who's not leading you in the right direction, that's gonna be a big problem because God is still gonna see it and punish the same way that He did for them. So anyway, that's day 25. I'm gonna say I'm gonna make three. I need to make three. I need to make three. If I don't make three, I need to at least make two. Okay. Okay. So that is 25. Okay, have a good day. I will see y'all later. Yeah. See y'all. See y'all later.